Okay, so we are going to be recording this, so you can always go back to the recording of this session in ELM if you want to go back and watch some details that you might have missed or you'd like to see something again. We want to welcome you to our third session in our Back to School Tech Talk, talking about simple tools for complex thinking. And so we wanted to give you some great tools to get started with this school year and kind of build on that. And we have a few norms that we'd like to kind of remind you. If you'll go ahead and mute your microphones for now, you can mute your video if you need to as well. But if you have a question, feel free to unmute your microphone, or you can click that raise your hand comment to make a comment, or you can use the chat button in the bottom right to actually add your comments there, and we can address your comments in the chat. So keep your microphones muted unless you have a question. Raise that hand if you have a question, or also do the chat. And we appreciate you following those norms. The next slide is going to talk about that you can learn PD points for this in ELM, our e-learning management course. You can earn up to 4 in-service points for this course. There is the title, and also on the website is the course code if you need that as well. If you can complete the coursework, the follow-up, and the survey by December the 16th of this year, you can earn up to 4 in-service points for this year. We want to thank Dell and our partners at ALP, which is Advanced Learning Partnerships, for bringing our great host today with us. Timothy has been around for a couple things. He does a great, I can't even think of what it was called now, the Shenandoah, oh gosh, my mind just
Virtual
went blank.
experiences.
Yes, and I even came up with that name, and I can't even think of it. And you've been working on some new ones for us, too, that we're excited about that. So we'll look forward to those in the future. So, Tim, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'll be back at the end with a few more announcements. So.
Very good. Thank you. Hi, my name is Tim Towsley. I was a classroom teacher for almost 20 years, and I am currently, as John mentioned, a consultant with Advanced Learning Partnerships. All of my contact information is here. Teachers are my #1 stakeholder. When I was in the classroom, it was students, but now you are my conduit to those young people. So if there's anything in here or in this toolkit, which I'm about to share, if there's anything in there that you have questions about, please reach out. Shoot me a text, email me, hit me up on Twitter. However you like to communicate, that's where I'm going to meet you. In this session, I'm going to share this toolkit in the chat for you. And then in this session, we're going to identify and discuss the needs or unique needs of today's learners. We're going to introduce or review the 6 C's of learning. Some of you know them as the 4 C's. There have been 2 added. And then we're going to explore some tools to address learners' needs in innovative ways. So first, we're going to start out with what do today's learners need? And there's a couple things in here that we're gonna talk about. I'm going to pull up a Jamboard that I want to share with you. There it is. So we're going to need this in just one moment. So we want to think about the unique needs of today's learners. So what I'd like for us to do is we're going to follow a protocol that is linked in the toolkit under the Project Zero protocols. But what we're going to talk about is the headline of your story. So I'd like to know your whole story, but we're a little short on time for that. So we're going to have to just kind of reduce that down to the headline. In the newspaper story about your classroom, what would the headline look like? So I'm going to stop sharing here for a second, and I'm going to share our Jamboard. Just give me the headline of what learning looks like in your classrooms. 6 to 10 words shared with a sticky would be lovely. These are great. Keep them coming. If we run out of room, page 2 is identical to this one. Don't go to page 3 yet. That one's something different. Okay, we see a pretty wide range of things, but some key words that I'm noticing here are exploring. I like the word rapport. I think that's really, really important in the classroom for lots and lots of reasons. Learning about different cultural heritages is really important in building community, which I think is the number one way to engage learners about complex thinking. Lots of engaging, lots of learning, lots of cultivating and celebrating. I love that. Look, I noticed this when it says celebrating growth, even if it happens at different rates. It's gonna happen at different rates because we're all wired a little bit differently. It's really important to recognize that. Lots of collaboration and communication. You're a step ahead with the C's there, and I love to see that. Is there any on our second page? Nope, that's okay. Great. We're gonna come back to those in just a few moments. But first, I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the needs of our students, and many of you have already recognized these. I'm talking with a virtual room full of teachers, so not a lot of this is going to be brand new, but it might validate some of the things that you've already thought or already practicing in your classroom, or it could encourage you to maybe push those boundaries just a little bit for our complex needs of today. So the value of school has traditionally been measured in terms of results, whether we're talking about grades, or standardized test scores. But I don't know that this is necessarily the goal of education. This isn't necessarily what we collectively aspire to. And this comes from Ron Richart's book, Creating Cultures of Thinking. The first chapter is linked in that toolkit if you'd like to take a look at it. It's pretty heavy, but I think really inspirational in creating change within our classroom walls. So we can no longer rely on the measures of success from the past to prepare students for our very uncertain future. Richard polled a number of employers. He wanted to find out what the employees that he was seeking, new hires, were lacking, and what we could really focus on as classroom teachers to create the young adults that we would love to see, in our workforce. And a lot of the words that came up, they wanted folks who were curious, empathetic, creative, respectful, helpful, willing to learn from his or her mistakes, which implies willing to learn about, or willing to make mistakes. So then they can be adaptable, well-rounded, critical thinkers. And some other ones, we're looking for professionalism, work ethic, collaboration, communication, ethics, social responsibility, critical thinking shows up again, and problem-solving skills. I gathered that there's a few reading, teachers of students of reading and English in here. So you'll probably pat yourselves on the back a little bit to imply or to recognize that only one of the traditional academic subjects popped up in those needs of new hires, and that was reading comprehension. And it was ranked 5th of the top 5. I like this note here that the HR interviewer is typically a 45-year-old white man with a college degree or 2, and I would agree with that. But so this list of employers also included some parents, and these were other groups from all over the country that included parents and teachers, college professors, and a number of other folks, and they were looking for very similar skills when asked the question, what kind of adults do we want our students to grow into? And the skills were almost identical, verbatim, but a couple of them, curious, problem solving, risk takers. We wanted to see the collaboration, good listening, which I think, one of those interpersonal communication skills that's mentioned in the chat is listening. I think 90% of communication is shutting your mouth for a little bit and listening to what those around you need to say. Making connections between, people, ideas, texts, and then serving as a global citizen, a member of a community, someone who's aware of his or her impact on the environment that they live in. So what we're going to focus on today is thinking of ways that we can break away from that one-size-fits-all model of education and really outfit students and equip them with the skills that they need for the future. So we're going to come back to stories, because you guys wrote the headlines of your story. And Richard says, to understand the culture of a school or a classroom, we need to look at the story about learning that each is telling. So beliefs, messages, values, behaviors, traditions, routines, and so on are not the culture itself, but are significant indicators of culture to the extent that they reinforce the core story being told. They are the means by which we identify the story of learning. So with this in mind, we need to think about, what is the old story? Maybe the story that was, told when we were in school, when we were in a classroom, we were in our students' seats. What's the current story, which you've addressed, in the opening exercise about headlines. And then the third is the new story that we want to be telling. Creating a news story to shape the culture of our classrooms requires us to ask these what-if questions. What if schools were less about preparing students for tests and more about preparing them for a lifetime of learning? What if students were really engaged in their learning rather than merely compliant in the process of school as it is done to them? And what if students had more control over their learning? So I want to revisit the Jamboard, and I thank you for sharing the headlines for your current story. But I'd like to think about where do we want to head? What do we want our new story to be, or what would we like our ideal story for preparing students for the future to look like? So I'm going to reshare our Jamboard. Skip a few slides. So same format. What would you like your story, or what would you like your classroom to tell? What story would you like your classroom to tell about learning? So take a few moments, throw a sticky or two up there. And page 4 is exactly the same. So if we run out of room, we can move over there. And if the story that you would like your classroom to tell is very similar to what you feel it currently tells, that's fine too. But maybe we could see something about the future, so something moving forward. Connect what you said earlier to the future that our students are heading into, with the understanding that none of us knows what that looks like. So there's absolutely no wrong answer. to even get a couple more. Okay, with what we have, we can kind of synthesize some ideas that I think, are very, very progressive and moving forward. They may echo some of the things that we saw in the earlier headlines, but these headlines talk about, I love this green one, relinquishing curricular control back to teachers where it should have stayed. You guys are the professionals in your room, and you are going to take what is mandated and, I like to say, put your own stink on it, and you're going to have, some of that control. But I agree. You guys are professionals, and, teachers should be treated as professionals. But in this case, we want our students to explore a number of topics. Remember that we teach students, not those subject areas. We teach those young people, and we really need them to be able to make those connections between, what they're reading in English class with what they're learning in history class, maybe what they're talking about in science. And that will give them some of those, cross-curricular academic conversations that are really going to move learning forward, and also have them feel supported in a community of folks who are also kind of learning this along with them. And I challenge you to include yourself in that group, because like I said, none of us knows exactly what the future is going to look like. So we're learning things every day. So if we model that learning, especially if we model learning things that might not sit well with our previous understanding, that's going to, kind of normalize changing our minds when presented with new evidence. And that's something that I think is going to lead to, deeper communication, deeper thinking, conversations where we're not arguing about meanings of things, we're exploring meanings. And I would agree. Effective communication really does open doors for success in the future. Lovely. I love that I feel like we're all on the same page here. So let's move a little bit forward, since we don't have a ton of time. And I need to get those tools, right? So as many of you mentioned, you talked about collaboration and communication and some of those C's. So we're going to really quickly review the others. So what are some ways that we can best address our learners' needs in our classroom? So we're going to embrace those 6 C's. And that's character, citizenship, collaboration, communication, creativity, and critical thinking. So critical thinking is processing information and arguments in new ways, looking for patterns, making connections between what we've learned today and what we've learned before, and also thinking about how it would apply to the quote unquote real world, right? So critical thinking, the stuff that we're going over in our classrooms need to be relevant to those young people. And having a better understanding of who is in your classroom is going to help you recognize what is relevant to them. With collaboration, obviously, we're working together to reach shared goals. So that includes setting those goals so that we can share them, and then maximizing the strengths of each of the team members while learning from and contributing to the conversation itself. Which leads us to communication. We're sharing thoughts, ideas, and solutions through digital fluency, writing, and speaking tailored for a range of audience. And I think that with communication, it should also come that we're really learning ideas and having conversations, emphasis on the conversations, not so much the arguments, because we have to remember that we're talking with young people. These are people who are learning things, and we need to respect them in every case. Even when they might be wrong or their thinking might be misguided, we need to respect that they are learning along the way. So and teach them to do the same. Never shoot anybody's ideas down. Just try to rechannel them toward things that might mesh better with facts and evidence that we have presented. Sometimes this requires creativity. Sometimes we need some new approaches to creative, innovative innovation and inventions, and asking the right questions to generate new ideas. Key to all of this, I think, is that sense of inquiry, that questioning. And I think that in collaboration and communication with one another, that's where we can explore some of these creative ideas, because we're looking for new ways of thinking, new ways of knowing, not necessarily the right answer. And sometimes those new ways of knowing, they come from taking a creative approach to a classical problem. And the two that have been added more recently are citizenship and character. Citizenship is thinking like a global citizen, understanding our role in our classroom community, in our school community, in our local community, in our city, our state, and then globally. To look at some of those problems that are there, and think about ways to approach them that are going to be for the greater good. And closely connected to that is our character. We want to work on character so that we can reach maybe shared goals, but they can also reach individual goals. Set individual goals, and then look at the strengths of the team members of the classroom, and then also like building on that to be a better person. So the tools, finally, this is where we are. So these are a number of things, and these are all linked in the toolkit. I can't go over the entire toolkit because as a teacher, I was always an over planner, because it's better to have too much than not enough. So I would never run out of things where we would just have dead space. But not that dead space is anything wrong. There's anything wrong with that, because that's where you can get to know your students better through all of those 6 C's. So these are just some simple tools that'll help you connect with your students, help your students connect to the things that we're learning and with one another. My favorite one is the Harvard University's Project Zero, the Thinking Routine Toolbox. So I'm going to stop sharing here for just a second, just to kind of walk you through some of these things. And this is, I know that Common Sense Media borrows from this one quite a bit, and you'll see this come up in other places as well. I need to make sure I'm giving you the right one. You know what? It's hidden. I know where it is. I have a window hidden behind my I lost it. Bear with me, please. Thank you. Okay. Okay, here we are. So Project Zero's Thinking Routine Toolbox has lots and lots of ways of exploring ideas. And any one of these tools could be applied in just about any situation that arises in the classroom. But it just gives us really simple, almost like sentence starters to kind of think about different ideas, and it can be applied, like I said, just about anywhere. So we've got some core thinking routines, and we're going to practice with one of these in a little bit. We can dig deeper into ideas. Maybe we've got a general understanding of things, so we can just dig deeper and explore. Then we've got, how can we get to that idea? How can we share that idea and then explore it before we dig deeper? If we're just looking at systems and the way that things work within that system, there are routines for that. If we're taking perspectives, we mentioned that our classrooms are made up of a lot of diverse learners and diverse, cultures, lived experiences, etc. So one way is that we can say, how would we take somebody else's perspective as looking at this topic, and that would also help us figure out ways to communicate to an audience that might think differently from us, because we want to make sure that we're including not only everybody in our students, but if we're teaching them to present to an audience, they need to connect to everybody in that audience as well. Then we take those perspectives and we look at controversies and dilemmas. G.K. Chesterton is one of my favorite authors from a particular era, and he was he's interesting. He was an atheist who converted to Catholicism late in life. He was also he started writing about mystery stories from the perspective of this Catholic priest to understand just all kinds of philosophical ideas in the world. But he said that the one way the thing he hates about argument is that it ruins a perfectly good conversation. And I think that in this era of controversy and dilemma, teaching young people how to have conversations about that without judgment and really trying to understand things could be really valuable toward becoming a better citizen and developing a character that can fit within that society. And then, of course, exploring things that we don't know, like what is the future going to look like? There's some possibilities and analogies that you'll find here. And then putting it all together through synthesis. Sometimes we're looking at just different images or objects, and then come back to the global thinking that ties into citizenship. So there's lots and lots of these. I'm going to take just one that we looked at, if I can find the headline one. I know it's on here because that's where I pulled it from. Should have had it already open. There it is. So these are really, really simple. If you open them, there's just a link to the resource, and it gives you a really simple tool that you can share with students. So write a headline that captures the most important aspect of an issue, and then talk about how your headline differs from what you would have said yesterday. So we did it a little bit differently. We thought about what is our headline going to look like into the future, but you could talk about what your current headline looks like in a way that's different from the past. It gives you, some different things to think about, but really this is the simple tool that you can share with students. Really direct, and it opens conversation. And I think that the cool thing about good questions is they don't necessarily prompt answers; they prompt more questions, and it gives you endless things to talk about. Some other ones that are in there are they're wide and varied. Lots of stuff to explore. I don't want to get too far into them today. I just wanted to show you the one, and we're going to practice one other one about thinking and wondering in just a bit. Stop that one and we'll come back to the National School Reform faculty also includes a bunch of other protocols for exploring any number of topics. And I should add that these can be adapted for elementary, middle, and high school. I taught mostly high school, but I've also worked in middle schools, and I have been a Cub Scout leader for 11 years, including running a citywide day camp for young people. So I have a lot of experience with elementary thinkers as well, and exploring different ideas, not so much in the classroom, but we're still trying and failing and learning and growing, and I would say most importantly, communicating. But the National School Reform faculty, those protocols are very similar to the Project Zero ones, but they have some things that are a little bit different that might speak to you in a different way. So they've got some that you can pay for, but the free ones are also very, very good, and there are plenty of these that lots and lots to scroll through. One that if you were in the previous session, one of the earlier session today, with the Four Corners feedback or the Four Corners topic, I don't think that one's in here, but we do talk about like different feedback principles. There's so many that we could go through. And I think some are better than others. But for the sake of time, I'm going to let you explore those on your own in just a minute, because I want to give you some time to kind of poke through those and see what really jumps out. One that's maybe a little bit more complex, but it's still relatively simple, is the critical uncertainties. And this is really from a blog called Liberating Structures, but it looks at things that we don't know. And I think that many of you are familiar with Sir Ken Oliver's TED Talk about one of the most debilitating things for young people today is their fear of being wrong. We really need to like remove that fear of being wrong, because, well, failure is an integral part of learning. So we need to teach young people to make their mistakes, but learn through that reflection, and identifying critical uncertainties about a topic can be one of those things. So we'll look at that one a little bit. It's a tool much like the others that you've seen. You might see a pattern here. But what I really like about this one is it talks about how it's structured, but there is the sequence and steps and time allocation that is there. So this one walks you step by step through ways to set up your classroom, and then kind of go through the steps that they should be taking. This might take me longer than we have to go through every bit, but I know that some of us like to think in a very orderly fashion. What are ways that we can do this step by step to convey that towards students? But this one, I like how it kind of combines a lot of the other protocols into a sequence that you can run in your classroom. And the more often you do it, the easier it becomes. And if you use one of these regularly, it becomes the routine, so that students are going to think this way naturally. Because we're not just teaching them what to think, but we're teaching them how to think, and recognizing that we all learn in different ways. So one way of thinking might work for one situation or might work for one student that doesn't work for another situation or another student, but putting them all together can help make a little bit more sense. I think I've got one more to share. And this one, I saved my absolute favorite for the last. This is from the Ask Big Questions initiative. Now, Ask Big Questions was a project of Hillel International to try to address conflict in college-age students. So some of the wording in this one might be, maybe above your student's head, especially if you teach the littler folk. But the process is really what I want to focus on. And their idea is you can build community by asking big questions that everybody can answer, so that you can have the conversation to get to the answers to the hard questions. So let me just show you this, some of their materials. And this one, you can access all of their conversation guides through the askbigquestions.org website. But I've downloaded the PDF of all of their materials. Which I don't think it okay. It's only letting me share Chrome windows, which I don't want to do that. Share a PDF. There we go. So in this regard, I would usually start these with students where I would facilitate the first conversation, and then I would ask for volunteers to be the facilitators of further conversations. And we would try to do these over the course of a month or so, and that's the way that it's structured in all of the resources that they offer. But we would do these. I would take every Friday. We would have what was called the Friday Forum, and we would introduce the topic. and then we would kind of talk about it. Then we would look at some particular text that spoke to that topic, and they've given you several, but they can be adapted for different age groups as well. But here's our conversation flow. First, we would ask the big question. We'd all look at the question that we're considering, and we'll come up with some mutual understandings of that, and then we would share our own experience with that. And I'll give you an example of what this looks like in just a second. But once we've addressed the big question and everybody has had a chance to share their contribution to that conversation, then we would learn some more about it. We might learn about a perspective that isn't represented among the young people in our classroom. And then we might, focus on that reflection. So then we would have a reflection on this conversation, talk about what we learned collectively, and then maybe talk about ways of continuing that conversation. And I always took it, as a mark of success, if A, these were not boring, they never were, and B, the pinnacle of success for these was if a parent emailed me to say that they carried this conversation into the dinner table. That was how I knew I had won. I was like, great, they've taken this outside of our classrooms and into their community, and continued that learning. So I'm going to jump in this PDF. This PDF I can't share the whole thing with you because it's massive. But if you go to the askbigquestions.org website and you click on the resources, it lists all the conversations by month. But then if you scroll all the way to the bottom, you can request the PDF, and it's going to tell you to add it to a cart, but there's no cost with any of these. The only thing that costs money is if you want to order a book of them, because they have to pay to print it. But if you just want the digital version, it's all free for anybody. So I'm going to skip to July's conversation, because who is in your family? And that would be the start of it. I would probably just ask the question, who's your family? Is this, your parents, your siblings, your biological family? Maybe you're adopted, because you have an adopted family. Maybe you are, closer with a lot of your friends, and maybe your friend's mom has been sort of a surrogate mother to you. Everybody would have a contribution to this conversation, and that would really kind of that's what we would do for the first Friday in our forum series. Is we would just kind of have the conversation, learn more about one another, build community, and I would definitely contribute to this conversation as well. Because I think that if we can model this for young people, they're going to feel much more comfortable with sharing things that are very personal to them. But after we talk about the conversation, we've had that conversation about how we share our experience, then we would learn a few things. And in this case, it's got, I want to show you the topic, a number of different things. So there's this story, or this this really, it's an article. So the people who you love when no one else will. It's a short kind of reflective essay. And then there's some discussion questions about it, about what would come to mind. And then there is a further down. Did I skip it? No. Well, sometimes there'll be links to TED Talks, to short videos, to news stories, lots and lots of things. But then we get to the questions about, what did we learn? What are some insights that you have about this big question? How do you connect this to other topics? How did this help us connect to one another? And I think that this is where the power comes, because it ties all of those C's together. We're talking about how the individual can act within a bigger community, and collaborate with others, can share ideas, can communicate those ideas to one another. And it's really just a simple thing, because all of this started with, who is in your family? A question that anybody could answer. So what I'd like to do now, as we get a little bit closer to wrapping up, is I would like to come back to our Jamboard. First, what we will do is we will take a couple of minutes to look through the resources in the toolkit. So we're going to take about 10 minutes to look at those. And as you're looking through, I would like for you to share, and this is one of the protocols from Project Zero, share some ideas. What do you see here? Like, what is interesting? What sticks out as something that you could use? What do you think? Maybe there's something that's in there that challenges you a little bit, and you want to, think about that a little bit further, or think of a different perspective on how to look at it. And then finally, I would like to know what you're wondering. Like, how would this fit within my classroom? How can I adapt, ask big questions for an audience of elementary school students? So let's take about 10 minutes, and then we'll come back together and talk about some of these ideas. Toolkit. Jamboard link in there as well. These folks have joined since I initially shared. Let's take about 3 more minutes. Let's keep those ideas coming. Down to about a minute. Keep them coming. Thank you. Okay. So let's take a look at these. I love to see that you found a lot of useful information in the Project Zero materials, and I encourage you to further explore those, because you could take the rest of the month before school starts and never get through all of them. They have a lot of versatility and can be applied in many different ways at all age levels. And I liked that you pointed out. One of you pointed out that they are in English and in Spanish, and can help you access, other teachers and students in your community. There's a comment about the choice board link, and I really like choice boards, because when we're trying to develop agency in young people and help them explore all of these ideas, not only do not learn the same way, the way that they show that learning isn't always identical. So, long gone, I think, are the days of those tests where they just show everything that they know through multiple choice. But think about, work a little bit backward. Think about what you need them to learn, and then talk about how they show them different ways that they can express that. And in addition to, the Wakelet that I've shared here, if you do a quick Google search, you can find lots and lots of templates, Google Slides templates that give you, different choice boards, different menus, lots of different resources out there. We're looking at thinking. A couple of ideas came up in there about how, these resources, could be good to help students engage with their own learning, but then also, think critically and share that information with one another, because students are going to listen to us adults in the classroom on a good day 50% of the time, maybe 60 if we give them candy, but they're going to listen to one another, their peers. They're going to put that into language that they can understand, and they're going to listen to each other 75-90% of the time. So we want to identify some of those folks who can be our allies, and help convey the information that we would like to share, or the protocols, the strategies, the devices that we want to share. Channel those through a young person, and you're going to reach, everybody in your classroom. And then with wondering, how can we integrate this with the Smartboard or with Google Classroom? I think that pandemic learning has taught us all kinds of things. I have done the Ask Big Questions using the Jamboard, using Nearpod. I've done it virtually and I've done it in person, and I find it, pretty successful in both ways. But I think the challenge is addressing the students that are there in front of you, but also those who couldn't be there. Fortunately, I don't have a perfect protocol for you, but I'm sure that someone among your colleagues does have that protocol. So thank you for sharing those. I'm going to come back to our presentation. Wait. John, I'm going to turn it back over to you. Thank you guys so much. Like I said, if there's anything that you'd like a gap that you'd like me to fill in for you, please hit me up. My email address and all my contact information is available. Please get in touch if I can help.
Thanks, Tim. We want to thank everyone for being here, being part of our Back to School Tech Talk. We want to let you know that we have some more trainings available. Actually, this afternoon, we have some SMART training available. You can find that on our website, and you can also find it in ELM. But tomorrow, in day 2 of our Back to School Tech Talk, we're going to actually have a hands-on workshop from 8:30 to 11:30 tomorrow, entitled Building Instructional Practices and Walk Away with Technology Tools and Projects to Learn Authentically. And that's tomorrow, and you can earn up to 6 in-service points for that. If you want to register, it's in ELM, and you can register for that now, and it'll be just like today. This session won't be recorded because it's mostly hands-on. That'll be interacting with your colleagues as well. So we want to thank you for joining us today. A couple of quick announcements. We want to plug our District Technology Conference, which is coming up, and on the counter, on the website, it says 79 days. I'm like, but that's a lot. Our District Technology Conference, it's the second year. It's going to be virtual. It will be October 14th in 2022. So you can learn wherever you are and join us. And our theme this year is Resilience in Education, Looking Beyond the Horizon. We feel like we need to be resilient, and so that's going to be kind of a focus. And I put the link there. You can share with your teachers. The website's there. Feel free to do it. You can join us however you want to, at home, at school. It's going to be a great day of learning. The schedule's on there as well. We've got some great speakers and featured speakers, as well as colleagues of your own that'll be actually presenting. So that's going to be on October 14th at 8 a.m. And then I wanted to do a quick reminder. We have our website, which is edtechtraining.palmbeachschools.org, and our YouTube channel that has amazing resources that have things like, if you want to learn more about Flipgrid or some of the other resources that we have on Google certification or Google Classroom, we have wonderful links there. We have over 200 videos on our YouTube channel, and we have lots of resources on our website that are designed just for you. Tim's virtual learning experiences in Shenandoah National Park, which is an amazing experience because I feel like I was virtually there, is on that website as well. So if you missed that, you can feel free to join that. And so I just wanted to remind you that that slide's going to be there. in the toolkit. All the resources today are actually going to be in ELM. So you can see the recording. You'll be able to see that. Tomorrow, it'll be posted later today. The video will be posted later today, and it'll be in those courses. We want to thank you for joining us today, spending part of your time. Just like I said, all of those session materials are in the e-learning course, and you can feel free, like Tim's contact information's there, and so it will be a great day. So we want to thank everybody for joining us from the entire training team. You can find our contact information on our website, and for the entire district Department of Educational Technology, we all want to thank you for being here and helping make this year a great year for your students and yourself. And we hope you enjoy the rest of your summer. Thank you.
Friends.
And with that, I can stop the recording.